Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. And this show is a bit of an interesting mix because we have obviously some very nice SBC news. We have a really interesting crowdfunding campaign for a mini-PC which has something that other mini-PCs haven't had so far. That is a Jasper Lake CPU, just spoiler straight away. But also there's some interesting stuff for C++ developers because Carbon is a new programming language still in the very experimental stages from Google. We'll also be talking about a nice ESP32 console library and a wonderful YouTube series about manufacturing, which is more towards machining than kind of embedded stuff, but it's something that I'm sure a lot of you will find interesting. Anyway, with all of that said in the intro, let's get on with the show, shall we? We are starting this week's show by talking about the Eurocircuits PCB design contest, which we are running with Eurocircuits, strangely enough. The initial project idea submission deadline has been extended by 2 weeks. Although by the time I'm filming this, that's 12 days, 14 hours, 16 minutes, and 20 seconds. This is the phase where you come up with a PCB design and you send it to us, and out of those lists, our judges will pick several that will actually go on to be made by Eurocircuits right here in Europe. You can get a PCB completely manufactured and sent to you for free, up to the value of €500. And it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, it doesn't have to be something that's never been done before. It could be the first PCB you have ever designed. It could take one of your Arduino projects and put it onto a PCB. There are a lot of wonderful resources out there on the internet, a lot of YouTubers who are very generously sharing years of engineering knowledge to tell you exactly how to do that, to take your breadboarded projects and put them onto PCBs. And if you've ever been on the edge about doing something like this, I'd just like to remind you that the winner of this contest will win €1,000, second 600, third 400, and there are sustainability and social prizes as well. If you've ever been under any doubt as to whether you should or shouldn't try learning PCB design, this is the perfect time to do so, because the financial burden will not be on you. If you can come up with a PCB design that fits the application phase, they have to be PCBs that are designed in KiCad or Eagle. There are a huge amount of KiCad tutorials out there, given that it is free software. A rough project idea and description. This doesn't have to be an essay. If you've come up with an Arduino project on a breadboard that has a temperature sensor and a humidity sensor and a little LCD screen, your project description could be, I have come up with this idea on a breadboard, I know how this works. The idea behind this project is to learn how to make a working PCB and put it in a 3D printed or wooden or even cardboard enclosure with batteries to make a standalone PCB design, thermometer system that with a screen, and you just need to say what you'd want to do. And one thing that is nice is that there is a Eurocircuits PCB visualizer as well, where you can upload your PCB to Eurocircuits and it will give it a manufacturability check. After you've done all of your work in KiCad or whatever your software is, this will tell you if it's actually possible for them to manufacture, and it's a very nice last minute check. So, yes, as I mentioned at the very start of this, we have extended this by 2 weeks, although it's now down to 12 days. If you've ever thought about making a PCB design before, now's the time. Get to it. So we're going to move on to talking about the Pi Pico and the Pi Pico W, both of which I have here. Now, when the Pi Pico originally came out, it had MicroPython, it had Thonny. It is one of the easiest ways to get started with microcontrollers, and it's just, super exciting. Official Raspberry Pi Silicon, unofficial Raspberry Pi board, only $4. There's a lot to love here. And at the time, I downloaded and installed also the C and C++ toolchain, but getting it working on Windows was an absolute nightmare, and there was a few gaps in my knowledge in general as to how I could do it. The release of the Pi Pico W seemed to me the perfect time to re-approach this and work out what's the easiest way for someone to get started programming in C and C++ on this hardware. Now, the documentation is absolutely wonderful, and in fact, as you know if you follow the channel, I've just recently spoke to Alistair Allen, who's the head of documentation at Raspberry Pi. The official documentation is incredibly easy to follow, but what I wanted to do is make an absolutely no-nonsense point-by-point guide for someone to set up their own virtual environment for making for working with the Pi Pico W. I chose to do this by using a virtual machine, and I've written an article and made a video about that. Followers of the YouTube channel will probably have already noticed the video went live last week. There's an article here as well which has all of the written components to it as well. But in short, this article takes you from nothing to downloading VMware Workstation and running a virtual machine, Ubuntu, inside it, and then the only thing that virtual machine does is Raspberry Pi Pico related stuff. So you download the toolchain, download the SDK, download the examples, and this tutorial takes you as far as building those examples and then setting up your own project with a little bit of a high-level look at how a CMake lists file works. And I say high-level partially because I think beginners get bombarded with a huge amount of information that they have to learn, but they don't have to learn it now. And I don't have that knowledge either. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a professional programmer, but I have managed to set this thing up, and I think I've explained it in a way that will make it easy for you if you want to get started programming in C and C++ on the Pi Pico. And perhaps unsurprisingly, as you're about to see, the rabbit hole gets way deeper when you start talking about the programmable inputs and outputs that are part of the RP2040 silicon. Anyway, if you're interested in this tutorial, there's a link to it in the description of the video. The video is the main thing here. The text guide here could be followed without it, but really this is meant to be the thing that you are following. And if you want to copy commands or read in text certain aspects of it, you can go through this. But they are definitely there to be taken in together at the same time. Anyway, I hope this is something that is useful to you. It's certainly been nice for me to get back to actually working with hardware again and having the time to do so and having a good reason to do so. And I have a lot of fun plans for the many Raspberry Pi Picos I seem to have now amassed. Perhaps unsurprisingly, given my recent flurry of Pico-related activity, there's more Pico content in this show. This is a video series that was actually from 2021. As you're seeing, the date here is May 24th, 2021, and this is from the Life with David YouTube channel. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because my interest in the programmable in-outs, they are the little state machines that are part of the RP2040 architecture here, are fascinating. The idea behind them essentially is that your microcontroller that you use on your hobby board might have an I2S setup, it might have I2C, it might be able to talk to things over SPI, but if it doesn't have one of those interfaces, then you're kind of screwed. There's not much you can do. The programmable input outputs on these are designed to be a general purpose state machine that can act as any one of those things. Think bit banging, but in very high speed, and using a very small amount of assembly instructions that are designed specifically to work with them. Now, I'm not explaining this nearly as well as Life with David is, David from the Life with David channel is. This is a many episode series about PIO, starting from the very scratch. This is the second episode actually, and the idea here is that he wants to use the programmable inputs and outputs to talk to his 6502 desktop computer. And those of you who followed Ben Eater's wonderful series about making one of those will understand that that is a whole thing in and of itself that is very interesting. However, if you've ever had any interest with the programmable inputs and outputs, this is not only a C and C++ tutorial. It starts off with MicroPython and, of course, a lot of great diagrams explained very well. If you really want to understand PIO, this is one of the best places to start. I have been absolutely sessioning these videos and they are wonderful. Also, David is a wonderful host. His channel is great and it deserves a lot more attention than it gets. Anyhow, I will leave a link to this video in the description of the video that you're watching. David's channel has a bunch of these videos. What you're seeing here is the MicroPython example. Later on, there are also C and C++ examples. If you are interested in the Pi Pico or retro computing, this will be a channel that I think you will be quite into. I can't stress enough how well-paced these videos are. This is the Abacusynth, and it's kind of breathtaking. This is the Abacusynth. And it's kind of breathtaking. So what you're seeing happening here is these wooden objects are spinning on dowels, a little bit like fidget spinners. Remember when they were such a big thing, wood? And each one of them has a time of flight sensor and an infrared beam pointing at it from the side. So it can see how fast it's spinning and it can see how far away it is, and it's using those as controls for your more traditional low-frequency oscillators that affect and modulate synthesizers. This is a working hardware synthesizer, and you're seeing as well as some nice wooden buttons on the side there for changing the timbre and the different kinds of sounds. It's just a wonderful idea. It's actually a hardware implementation of a soft synth that the creator, Elias Jarzombek, whose name I probably horrifically mispronounced, made. But yes, it sounds wonderful and it looks wonderful. This video is just a short example of it. It's a 2-minute example embedded into this page. I'll stop it now just so I can talk. But yeah, I suggest going and looking at it and hearing it without me talking over it, although I have to talk over it. That's sort of my job. But I love this. I'm actually going to be linking the middle post here. This is the housing fabrication for the Abacusynth. And this goes through entirely how it was put together on a hardware level. Because, as I say, this was Elias's thesis, so it's very well documented. And at the bottom of this page, if we come down to the bottom, the next page is the Abacusynth hardware synthesizer, the roundup page that we've just looked at. There is also the PCB development side of it too, which talks about how this all works. Yeah, it's a really stunning idea, and I love the fact that this kind of happened in reverse to how a lot of other synthesizer design works. There are a lot of fantastic software synthesizers out there designed to work with a digital audio workstation, and a lot of them are trying to emulate hardware from the past. You know, they're fantastic. I'm not a snob when it comes to that kind of stuff. I've worked mostly in the box for years. This is the opposite of that. This is taking an idea of the plugin, and I've played with the plugin. It's a wonderful plugin, again, linked from this site, but actually making it a physical presence. A really wonderful idea, and I do hope you check it out. This is Chandler Carruth talking about Google Carbon, which is the C++ successor language in its experimental stages from Google. Now, this was recorded at CPP North Con, CPP North, and it goes into basically the idea of what Google Carbon is. What you're seeing on the screen here is succession languages, and let's take that first example, C and C++. C++ is without a doubt the successor language to C, but it inherits a lot of its technical debt and issues and problems. Carbon is meant to be an experimental successor to C++, as it says there. This talk is fascinating. It's in places slightly above my level of understanding, but then again, I'm not a C++ developer. I've written things in C++, I've helped develop games in C++, but I still don't know it the way that a proper C++ developer knows it. This is a language that's been designed to, not be a successor in the way that it takes all of the technical debt that C++ has, but that it is 100% interoperable with it. And it is. I've tested it. I've messed around with it. You can get the experimental build of Carbon today, and there is great examples as to how you can use it. I will make sure I link in this video, not only this video, but a guide that I saw, which is fantastic. There's a tutorial here, which basically takes you through all of the examples that of Carbon, as well as talking about why the Carbon language exists. If you are a C or C++ developer, this is something that's definitely worth looking into. I know it seems like a lot of languages come and go, and obviously everyone thought that Rust was going to be the be-all and end-all. It turns out that it hasn't quite been that, although there's still a lot of good reasons to get into Rust. It's just from the fascinating way that it's put together, and it's a great community, all that kind of stuff. Whereas this has definitely come from the point of view of saying they're actually trying to come up with a practical way of making this language work with C++, and with the idea of it being a potential successor that is interoperable with it. If you have a legacy C++ code that you don't want to get rid of, this will natively work with it, but hopefully will work in a way that your new code won't fall into the same pitfalls and traps as your old C++ code can. As I said before, this is a level of technical knowledge that is way above mine in any programming language. I am an amateur enthusiast. But the way that Chandler talks about it is fantastic. The talk itself is under an hour long, after which there is a long Q&A session. I haven't gone through the Q&A session yet, but the talk itself that I listened to and watched was, it really is fantastic, even though some of it is a little bit above my knowledge grade. If you are someone who's used C++ for a long time, please let me know in the comments what you think of this. To me, this all sounds wonderful and great, but obviously I don't have the experience that you do, and so far this has been presented as something with nothing but advantages. I'd love to know what some of the disadvantages might be to an idea of coming up with the successor to C++. After all, it's not the first time people have tried to do this, but it does seem like they've thought about it in a very good way. This is Imagen, and it is kind of incredible. I'm not on screen for this one because you need to see it. Just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about MidJourney, and I've talked about DALL-E, the second version of that, in the past. All of these take a text prompt as an input and produce an image as an output. And I thought even just a couple of weeks ago that these are getting so good that how could they possibly get better? But they have. This is a photorealistic tool that takes text input and outputs AI. If you understand how these things work, you can find the research paper just here. I haven't even started to look into it because it's way above my understanding, but you cannot argue with the outputs. A marble statue of a DJ koala in front of a marble statue of a turntable. The koala is wearing large marble headphones. This looks like a photograph. I don't know what the YouTube compression is doing, but this looks like something that someone has actually made in real life and photographed. In fact, they all do. Yeah, the quality of these text-to-AI tools is almost frightening at this stage, because all of these things are just AI-generated images. Now, there is some high-level information here as to how this is all working, how it takes text inputs and how it can turn it into as it says, with a cascaded diffusion model, deep textual understanding, outputting photorealistic generation. There's also a quite nice little play park here that you can mess around with different versions of the same tool. These are obviously all pre-made images, but if you say I want to see a photo of a British short-hair cat wearing sunglasses and a black leather jacket riding a bike in a garden, it will generate it for you. Now, changing just one thing, turning it into an oil painting, generates an entirely different kind of image. That's what I find sort of amazing, and I don't understand in any way, shape, or form. And this is also cycling through them, so it's just turned it into a raccoon. Let's make this a photo of a fuzzy panda wearing a cowboy hat and a red shirt, skateboarding on a beach. That's kind of, again, incredible. Although that's the first non-photo-y one I've seen. If I changed it in a garden, yeah, that looks like a photo. Yeah, I could play with this for hours. If you are interested in this, there's plenty to read here, but interestingly as well, one of the limitations it says, one of the things they think about is the societal impact of being able to do this, which is obviously a constant worry at this stage, but it is also breathtaking. A giant cobra snake on a farm made of corn. If you are enjoying the Electromaker Show, there are a number of things you can do to help us. The first is to head to the channel that you are under and hitting the subscribe button. As I have probably just mentioned in this episode, we just hit 10,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and it's a good thing. The more subscribers, the higher the chance they're going to recommend this to other people who are into technical things. If you do enjoy the show and the content we put out on the channel, also, it's worth hitting this button here. This is the notifications button. If you select all, you will only be notified on these main channel videos. We don't really bother with YouTube Shorts anymore, but even when we put them out, you won't get notifications for those. They're specifically bracketed separately. You'll only get the main channel stuff, and that is usually just the Electromaker Show. Recently, we've been doing a bunch of different stuff, but these Electromaker interviews will probably only be once a month, yeah, the Newton Maker Day was a sort of one-off, and things like Embedded World are also very rare. We're not jetting off to these amazing things all of the time, but these are things that you can do, and of course, just liking the video that you're watching right now. Again, it's a very good way to tell YouTube that you actually like it. The other way that you can support us is by buying things from the Electromaker shop. The Electromaker website at electromaker.io does have a shop section, and we stock stuff from all of these people that you're seeing flying across the top of the screen. Raspberry Pi, Arduino, pretty much everybody. We are not immune from the shortages that everyone else is facing, but we do have a massive selection of stuff in stock. If you're thinking of starting a project, consider thinking of us. And if you are thinking of making a project, consider uploading it to the Electromaker project section, because any kind of project documentation is fine by us. We want to see what you have to say about your projects. It doesn't matter if they're not even finished yet. And at the end of each month, a panel of judges pick their 3 favorite projects to win a bunch of development hardware from Nordic Semiconductor, along with Amazon gift vouchers and various kinds of swag. So there's good reasons to document your projects as well. It's also a nice thing to learn how to do. But yes, whether you're someone who just subscribes to our YouTube channel or listens to the podcast or comes to the website to read things or indeed buys things for your projects from us, thank you very much. It all helps. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the show. Now, this is normally the part of the show where we'd have the mystery box contest, but we still have a contest ongoing currently, and that is for this. This is the Nordic NRF 5340 Audio Development Kit, and it combines everything that the 5340 Bluetooth chip has, which is a very powerful chip that runs the Zephyr operating system, which is a real-time operating system, but it combines it with a bunch of fantastic stuff, like an audio codec with input and output for audio, an SD card slot, somewhere on here, battery-powered or USB-C powered, and a bunch of handy user buttons with words like play and pause and volume, and I wonder what you could possibly do with that, like some kind of internet radio, or the first thing I thought of was, of course, a Bluetooth synthesizer, because I'm a one-trick pony. However, this is a wonderful bit of kit. I'm kind of loath to give it away. However, we're right in the middle of doing so. If you would like to win this, you just need to be a subscriber to this YouTube channel, head down to our comment section and say what you would build with it, and leave the hashtag NRF5340. So there's no mystery box prize this week because of the Audio DK ongoing contest. I will announce that next week. But I also wanted to take this moment just to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to us. We just hit 10,000 subscribers, which is to me an astonishing number. I know that YouTube is this place where you get people with millions of this and that and the other, but for a show that talks about maker and embedded culture once a week in a relatively high level way with a wide variety of different kinds of things, it astounds me that 10,000 people wants to know about this show happening each week. And when this show started in late 2020, it was very vague. The idea was to come up with a weekly maker show. Some news, some new products, and I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea if anyone would be interested in it, and it's been such a pleasure to do this every week for the last 2 years, and I'm really looking forward to continue doing it. I feel like it's quite exciting times for us now because we finally started branching out a little bit from the original idea from the show, and that's it. Thank you so much. That's it, basically. Thank you for subscribing and sticking with me. There'll be lots more Electromaker coming, and maybe we'll have to do some kind of special 10k subscriber special. Maybe that'll be a live stream. Maybe we'll try and make something together. I don't know. I'm really interested to hear your suggestions for that. If there's anything you'd like to do as a little celebration, maybe we could all hang out in the Discord server one night or something like that. But for now, thank you so much. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Moving on to a very quick funding website things, and today we are on Indiegogo, which is a site that we don't actually really frequent all that often, mostly because there's so much amazing stuff on Crowd Supply and of course Kickstarter as well. But this is something that you may be interested in if you are a connoisseur of mini PCs. So, I'll let this video play in the background, but with the sound off just while I mention it. But the first thing you're going to notice is that, yes, this is a very, very small mini PC with all of the right ports you would hope for. I can give you a quick spoiler as well. It does also have a Bluetooth 5 point something and Wi-Fi 6 capabilities. And as it says, you can watch 4K at 60 Hertz. As to whether all of these benchmarks are exactly as they say or not, we'll have to wait and see, because this hasn't gone into production yet, hence it being on Indiegogo, although they have already hit their targets. Now, you also briefly saw the Intel N6005 CPU there. This is, to my knowledge, the first Jasper Lake CPU that we have in a mini PC, but by the time this comes out, whether it still will be the first is, of course, another question. So yes, you can watch this video yourself on the Indiegogo page. There's also a bunch of information here too, but the short answers to most of the bigger questions is how much RAM can it have? Up to 16 gigs. The SSD can be up to 1 terabyte, which is compatible SATA NVMe. Intel Pentium Silver N6005 and dual 4K outputs, silent cooling, although I don't understand how it can be actually silent if it's a fan. I've never understood the claims of silent fans, but yeah, it looks very, very compelling. If you are someone that has mini PCs and knows more about them than I do, I'd be interested to hear if you think there's any potential issues with this, because this looks absolutely amazing, and it also looks like a bit of a steal in terms of money. So the reason this is so incredible from a money perspective is that the bottom spec version of this is 156 euros, but the bottom spec version still has 8 gigs of RAM, and it still has a 512 gigabyte SSD. Yes, it's SATA rather than NVMe, and there is a big speed difference there. I would point out, though, I use SATA SSDs here, and I am a very heavy disk drive user. I make videos, so yeah, I know that there is a massive difference, but it's certainly not been an issue for me. But even the top spec version of it, which is the 16 gigabyte version with a 1 terabyte NVMe, is only 469 euros. Could you get a full-size computer for that price, which is actually better than this? Yes, you absolutely could, but not one that you could fit into a small bag, as you're seeing in the GIF here. This is not finished at this point. The Indiegogo campaign has been a massive success. They've made 76,000 euros. They originally wanted to make 6,000. But yes, they're at the prototype stage, as it says here. They're not in production as yet. I imagine they will be relatively soon, given the amount of money that they've made, but you have to take all of these things with a grain of salt at the minute because of the chip shortage. I'm very, very tempted to get one of just the bottom level versions of these, just so I can have a fully functional mini computer just like in the kitchen. It will fit on the kitchen shelf. It is the size of a mug. It's, yeah, just incredible how powerful these mini PCs are getting. We're going to close out this week's show talking about an ESP32 console library that makes it Unix-like. It's very interesting. Also, a Rock5 SBC, the latest SBC coming from Rackster. And it's a fantastic CNX software article about it, and also why it's not quite ready yet. But first, this series on making prototypes from Dan Gelbart has absolutely captivated me recently. I can't remember which blog it was. It may have been Adafruit that pointed out that this almost 10-year-old YouTube series takes you through how to prototype and make something with an absolute master with so much experience in working in a workshop environment. It takes you through everything from the initial design phase, why some things are good ideas to use and why some things aren't, through to how to do things safely, how to work with all different devices. And in fact, if you look on the channel itself, you will see everything from bending metals through to working with water jets, working with drills, but also stuff like safety, also stuff like how to design things, how to work with non-metals. And more recently, there's a workshop from just 9 months ago, so Dan is still very much active. I'll leave a link to the first video in the description of this video, and I would suggest just doing what I did, which is just watching the first couple of minutes of it. I just thought, oh, it looks interesting. I ended up last night staying up and watching all of them, just from start to finish. He has a wonderful way of speaking, explains things very simply, but is clearly heavily experienced and still kind of humble. It's just a wonderful series. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, on to the Rock5 Model B. Way back at the start of the year, CNX Software reported on the fact that the RK3588 SBC was now able to pre-order. Now, the RK3588 is a newer chip that we've known about for a while, for at least a year and a half, or maybe longer. I can't quite remember. I remember talking about it on the show at the time, but there was nothing that featured it. And here it is. It is going to be here soon, and it is going to start at $79. But like I said, this was back in January, they were reporting on this. If you would like to know the full specs of this, I suggest going and reading this article. It is linked in the description along with the next article I'm going to be showing you. But very quickly, it is the octa-core Cortex A7655 Big Little Pico ITX SBC, up to 16 gigs of RAM, M2 and NVMe storage, 2.5 gigabytes optional Wi-Fi 6 and 8K video outputs. All the usual bells and whistles. Very nice. Now, the guys at CNX Software have their hands on one. They were part of the big, the great debug, I think they were calling it, which is quite nice. A debug party, I like that. And having actually had it in the hands and worked with it, there's good and bad, it seems. It is here, it works, and it's very, very quick. If you look here, this is kind of amazing. The memset is just out the box way better than everything else, and in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. I am not very good at benchmarking, I'll be the first to admit it. If you are someone who understands this, you may get more out of this than I do. But just reading through this, essentially the general idea that I get from this is that the board looks like it's going to be amazing. It looks like it's going to be very fast. It looks like it's going to work very, very well. However, there are some issues, some things that work, some things that do not. As it stands right now, there isn't really support for some things, like there's no Bluetooth implementation. Again, as I was chatting to Alistair the other week on the podcast about, the only way you can implement some of these things is by speaking to the hardware manufacturer, where in this case they are the hardware manufacturer. We just have to hope they implement and document everything well enough for us to actually want to buy them and use them, because no matter how powerful this thing is, if they don't fix everything that's wrong with it, when it comes out, it's going to be useless to most of us. However, if you are interested in finding out more about the Rock5 Model B and the fact that there is a developer edition, they have an unboxing here. And again, the unboxing is actually sort of interesting, but this really is more of an unboxing and first boot up. If you really want to get into the meat of it, you will want to open the preview here. I will link both of them in the video description below. If you are someone who is kind of excited about the idea of the newer SBCs that are coming along, what do you want to see from this, other than them fixing everything so that it works? I always feel like there's always going to be that gulf between the way Raspberry Pi do things and the way a lot of the competitors do it, because they don't document things at a hardware level quite the same way. I mean, in the case of Banana Pi, sometimes there's just no documentation at all. Rackster, or I always say their name wrong. let's see, Radza, I always call them Rackster. Radza are also Rock5, generally a bit better at this. But if you have one of the older Rock5 boards, I'd be interested to know what your experience was using it throughout and how it compares. But yes, I'll leave a link to all of these in the description, and I'd love to hear what you think of the upcoming Rock5. Finally, this week we're taking a look at a pretty cool little ESP32 library that basically adds a functional Unix-type console to it. Now, it's not full Unix, obviously, but it's surprisingly fully featured and completely extendable. Now, I found this on Hackaday, and the article links out to the GitHub page, but I'll link this Hackaday article so you can read about it, but this link here is where I'm going to just now, just so you know. So the GitHub page basically takes you through everything that it does. You can set this going. You can use it like a normal Arduino library. It also works via platform IO if you're programming your Arduino, your ESP32 that way. Once you've included it, you just have to include the header file and then instantiate a console object, and then you'll be able to use the console. You can connect to it using PuTTY, and it has all kinds of stuff, including autocomplete and a bunch of I don't know how well you can see them here, but a bunch of already working commands here, like the list of registered commands, clearing the screen, showing the history, echoing text, but also turning on the LED. You can also add your own custom commands here as well. You could theoretically set up a playground which does a bunch of different I/O using the ESP32 with set functions, and instead of having to rely on buttons and things to test stuff, you could just set up a set of different commands that you add to yourself. So for example, here I think it said all you need to do is to add commands. Here's the examples. I'll let you read this yourself. I immediately thought of making just a fun box out of this by attaching a bunch of different peripherals to the ESP32 and doing some basic bootstrap code in order to get them doing something, and then using the terminal as a way of turning things on and off, and maybe adding text into things in the same way that you can do that by using a standard Fermata sketch on Arduino and setting up some Python programs so you can control it from your terminal, all that kind of stuff. Yes, this is what I was saying. So using console register command, you can register your own custom commands. You have to pass a command object, see the example below, which contains the name of the command, a little help text, and the function which should be executed. So, like I said, you could just come up with a bunch of different functions of your own. Here is a function for the LED. And it will basically allow you to turn the onboard LED on or off with whatever arguments you pass into the function from the console. It's such a fun idea, and it's one that I'm surprised that this isn't the first console that's come up on ESP32. People have emulated the entire computers using ESP32 and various other microcontrollers. I get it. The thing I like about this is that it is simple. And it is designed to be very extendable, and you could use this console in any one of your projects without too much overhead. So if you are using the ESP32 and you want a different way of approaching using it, this is definitely worth a little look, and it is of course very easy to get, as you can get it using the Arduino Library Manager. That is our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for the 10,000 subscribers, or being one of the 10,000 that this channel now has. And thank you also for the very positive feedback I've got lately, because it's a bit scary whenever you try and do new stuff. I've been doing the Electromaker Show for almost 2 years now, but the interviews are new, and the newer tutorial kind of stuff I'm doing is new. Of course, the stuff from Embedded World was new as well, and I've had almost fundamentally across the board positive reaction to that, which again means a lot. So yeah, in short, thank you so much. If you would like to support the show, you can head to the Electromaker store and buy stuff from there, or just subscribe to this channel. But for now, that is it. I will be back next week with another Electromaker Show, and of course we'll be putting the podcast out. I have another quite fun interview coming up very soon. I will tell you more about that when it happens. But for now, I hope you're having a safe, fun and creative week, and I'll see you in the next one.